start thinking in what kind of teacher I would like to be, it is necessary for me to think in how I approach English for the first time and what kind of student I was. I remember that I started to learn English in Colombia in kindergarten with nursery rhymes, watching television at home. I remember that I liked English because it had a different sound from Spanish, and because my teachers told me that I had a good pronunciation. Unfortunately, my process stopped when I moved to Italy because their students do not learn a second language until they start high school. When I started my process again, I was 12. My English teacher used the grammar translation method, and I began to compare what I did in the past. I did not like it at all because I felt that I was not learning. Besides, my dad kept me asking questions in English to practice, and he was disappointed with my pronunciation. Subsequently, my parents decided to pay me a private English teacher who used a different approach. I cannot say which one. I remember that she always started a lesson with an explanation with real-life situations. Then she assessed me with some exercises, and in the end, we listened to music to see in practice what we had been doing, to see idioms, vocabulary, and so on. Internet was not common in that time, so we couldn't see videos or watch something on the internet. I remember that she always used Italian and English at the same time, so I did not learn to speak fluently. But I improved my pronunciation, keeping with listening activities with songs, lyrics, and I improved my understanding as well. According to Yurda, teaching pronunciation is difficult because one loses vocal tract flexibility at the age of 5. But this does not mean that nothing can be done in order for a non-native speaker to improve pronunciation to be understood. I think that this was one of the main reasons why my parents paid for private course. Pronunciation is necessary for speech intelligibility, especially if we are maintaining long conversations, and my dad was not satisfied with my school teacher. However, what Giles, William, Mackey and Rosselli point out is that we cannot confuse pronunciation with accent because it is an identity market with influence in terms of prestige and ethnic minority. In fact, Derwing and Munro argue that accents are just different ways of producing speech, which means that they are referring to geographical varieties, in this case of English. Fortunately, in my last 5 years in high school, I had a wonderful English teacher. Well, I had 4 more, which were my philosophy, literature, French and German teachers, but I had a special relationship with my English teacher. Her name was Barbara, and she always made us talk in class about any kind of topic. Even if we had a book, we almost never used it because she preferred us to watch the BBC channel news in the language lab. We had 5 hours a week per language, and all of them were in the lab with computers and headphones to improve listening and understanding. After that, we always discussed what was happening in the world, while learning new vocabulary, grammar, culture, and many other things. The fantastic thing was that all those teachers I mentioned were like Barbara, but with some light differences in teaching, of course. Every kind of teacher has its own style. They were there to make us think and reflect on our autonomy as learners and as young people. I began teaching by accident, not because I wanted to be a teacher. A friend of my mom was working in a military school in Medellin, Jose Maria Cordova School, and they needed an English teacher. I was hired just because I knew the language. Soon, I discovered that teaching and knowing the language are two different things. I did not know about pedagogy or how to teach languages, but fortunately, I fell in love with teaching. I thought that I would meet wonderful teachers once in university, especially because they are teaching in a BA program, They are in charge of shaping young and fresh students' mind. Unfortunately, I met few that are not interested in this. I cannot tell why, but fortunately, there are many others at the Faculty of Education at Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana that are good listeners, good, strict teachers, and admirable human beings. They are at hand to help you if you are worried, if you're in doubt with your vocation, and this is one of the most pleasant aspects that my university has. All those aforementioned aspects, bad and good, of my teachers are what push me to keep shaping my thoughts as future teacher, because I would like to be like the good ones, of course. I know I cannot be perfect, but I want to be that reflective practitioner that Sean talks about. I would like to go back to schools and teach as much as I can in order to study more and research, because what I want the most is to fight our system of education and change minds little by little. Regrettably, teaching in Colombia is divided between the public and the private sector, not to talk about cultural minorities, and I find it offensive because we are one country and education should be not split, especially because we have different backgrounds in our classrooms. We as future teachers should be concerned on how to deal with diversity and with struggles that students have in the learning process. This is why my goal is to use culturally responsive teaching as a way to recognize, as Latson Billings argues, that the importance of including students' cultural references in all aspects of learning. Culturally responsive teaching is a pedagogy that acknowledges, responds, and celebrates cultural aspects in students from all cultures and backgrounds. And this includes, of course, differences and diversities, even of students from the same city. I think that in second language teaching, one of the most important things is being aware that you are teaching a language and the culture style of thinking of that language. That is why, in my opinion, it is not just necessary to know how to use methods and approaches like total physical response with preschoolers or communicative competence, just to make two examples among the many others that can be done. I think that teachers need to be aware that we are in a post-method era where the context is more important. That is why students need to know who you are, where the school located is, because some of them do not even know where in the city they are. And we, as English teachers, need to know what approach did students have with the language in order for us to reach them and not to cause traumas. Just to make for more examples, I would present my students' parents with a letter because they need to know who I am and what is my background. I would ask the same to them in order to create some kind of bond of communication. I remember that I started every class with news. It is important for students to know what is happening in the world, especially if they are teens. So I would keep this habit. I would use different resources like literature, movies, videos, real life situations to reach the language in real context. I would try to help my students with their performance with English, particularly with motivation and class discussion to create critical thinking and participation. Finally, as I already said about my teachers, the most important thing is to remember that we are human beings and we need to be aware of students' context in order for us to teach them the best we can.